Welcome to Humans United in Mutual Aid Network's December Solstice Solidarity Summit. So we are a community of communities of practice working on building a new economy that has mutual aid as its center and using do-it-ourselves practices from throughout all of life, including sharing and symbiotic relationships and natural flow of value and nourishment and care, and connecting with more formalized practices, also from time immemorial, like time banking or time exchange and mutual credit, and then other things like pooling money and having healthy peer-to-peer workflows and learning how to govern ourselves well. So the aim is to be able to identify community needs by being partners, friends, and neighbors with community members and having healthy communication about that, being able to identify what types of work and what skill sets are needed to carry out, creating a healthy, whole, thriving community, and then being able to carry out that work and be compensated in ways that support your own thriving life. So that's the aim of mutual aid networks. And I'll share a bit more about that organization and how we work in a minute. But the summit itself, we've been doing solidarity summits, I guess, for the year now, around a year. Tim, you could correct me. And what the aim is that each of us as community of communities of practice, each of us is at different stages with different strengths and different limitations in our own mutual aid work. And in a solidarity summit, we're aiming to create the opportunity for each of us to do what would be helpful to further our own mutual aid work, sort of exercise the muscle, hold each other's hands to do things that are a little uncomfortable for us, since mutual aid work is about going out and meeting your neighbors in ways that many of us have become unaccustomed to. It's really helpful for us to give each other that boost, and then to share like real tools and practices, so we can each build on our limitations from each other's strengths. And we have taken to always organizing them around the solstice or equinox so people can find each other. So you always know to look for a solidarity summit around the solstice or equinox. One mistake that I've continued to make is call it the winter solstice. I realize we do have many friends and partners in the Southern Hemisphere too. So trying to make sure and get more depth. Obviously, we're doing this in English today. So it is an aim for us to become more truly global and more actually language accessible. And that's one of the things that we're aiming to do via the mutual aid economy. So things will come up during the summit that'll be skill sets and support that we're looking to connect with in a mutual aid network. So if there are ever ways that you can contribute to creating a healthier situation, we always are encouraging people to earn human hours and jump into this kind of human mutual aid economy. And the idea is kind of hire each other to build the world that we want to live in. The summit this weekend, here's the schedule, and hopefully you have access to it easily. And you can always go to mutualaidnetwork.org to find it. There's a blog on the front page that has this title, and it has information about the summit. So we're here for the session Why Detroit Matters. I'm super excited. Actually, this whole summit is has a ton of great content. So I'm very happy that you can be here with us. And so we'll hear why Detroit matters and all the incredible initiatives happening in Detroit and what it means for our world. After that, we'll do tips and tools for mutual aid now. So a variety of people practicing mutual aid for a variety of purposes will be sharing how they work, and we'll be seeing what kinds of synergies we can identify that can push our work forward. Our annual member meeting and board election from 2 to 4 sounds boring, but it won't be. So we'll be just sort of giving the whole overview of what we're up to, what our different sister sites are doing. So the Humans United and Mutual Aid Networks has 10 different official sister sites in different places around the world. So from Costa Rica to South Africa to around the United States, and growing all the time. France. So you'll hear from some more of the people. Tomorrow morning, we're having some new partner hosts from the UK Campfire Convention. I've been doing campfire conversations for decades. The theme here is fireside chat, so it seemed good to share between our communities what we're doing. And their topic is, what is the common good? They're going to focus on navigating the very tricky circumstances we're dealing with the COVID pandemic, and really being able to communicate what does it mean when we talk about doing things for the common good, and really get into those very tricky conversations. It's another aspect of mutual aid and Humans United and Mutual Aid Networks is recognizing that we really need to build our skills at healthy human communication, especially across difference. So we're going to model that tomorrow. And then we'll hear from Goratz Norchik, who we work with on our software stuff. He lived through the dismantling of former Yugoslavia through disaster capitalism, and has incredible insights and learning to share with us. That'll go shorter than 2 hours. So we'll definitely get some breaks in between these. Then we'll hear, we'll have an exploration of solidarity economy principles. There's a group of people from around the world who put together a very incredible, thoughtful set of solidarity economy principles that are also a living document. So they're taking it around for conversations. She helped create it. She'll host the conversation tomorrow. And we're going to create discussion guides so people can take that discussion into their own communities locally. And then we'll end with a New Zealand roundtable. So we have a lot of partners in New Zealand, and they're doing incredible living economies work there. And they'll be sharing their work to wrap up our time together. So it's a lot of talking on the computer. In Madison, we're going to gather around a fire pit tomorrow morning. So I recommend feel free to try stuff like that. And we'll encourage people to lead us and like get up and move around or do something different during parts of this. I know that I want to hear everything that happens this weekend, and I don't want to be sitting the whole time. So we'll try to encourage each other to help keep it lively. So mutual aid networks will just be very brief, but we are, as I said, a community of practice. We are incorporated as a cooperative. We're very interested in how cooperative structure, governance, and law can support really changing the dynamics of corporate life and work life in this world. So a cooperative is a form of corporation, and it is designed to be able to do high level, very sophisticated work. There are many large cooperatives that you use regularly that you might not be aware of. It doesn't necessarily mean they're good. But REI, Land O'Lakes, Ace Hardware, I think Ocean Spray, there are a lot of different cooperatives managing a lot of very complicated work. There's nothing that we can't do as a cooperative. And obviously the whole planet, the whole universe, so they're managed cooperatively. And we realize it's something that we're getting back to, that we're relearning, and it's only specific culture and economic contexts that need to relearn it. But I live in one, so that's one reason I'm motivated to do this. We're based on very explicit core principles, and our mission is to create means for everyone to discover and succeed in work they want to do with the support of their community. We thought of that very carefully when we wrote that. We mean it very explicitly when we say everyone. We like to talk about creating an economy for the 100%, and we are very much interested in stopping any divisions between living beings as we're able, and create situations where we're living peaceably among each other. And these are core principles, and they are available from our website. We won't go into all of them, but they're pulled from time banking core principles of reciprocity and respect and community, and especially redefining work valuing all kinds of work. And then we take it farther to redesigning work. And then also cooperative principles, autonomy and independence. And we also like to say autonomy and interdependence, mutual aid among mutual aid networks, cooperative education. We very much want to build on popular education and always shared learning. And some principles of governance of the commons pulled from Eleanor Ostrom's work. So including clear rights and responsibilities of participation and ownership and governance. And we're also committed to shared open tools and open source tools and processes, open, transparent tracking and performance. We want to reduce the fear of taking risks, reduce the fear of failure. There's no such thing as failure if you share your learning. And if we're going to create a new world, we have to go out on some limbs. Building community sustainability, 12th core principle, and we will get right to it. Aiming to value all types of work, and I will say including that also especially care, creativity, community work. And we both share the tools, but also just the practices. So some of the things that we do are support each other to learn how to really reduce our monetary expenses via mutual aid tools, so we can actually reduce the amount of time we have to spend participating in an exploitative work situation. And our sister sites around the world, the aim is to create networks of real trust in real communities, whether they're physical or communities of interest or practice, and then create networks of real trust between them so we can create a whole neighborly global economy. And then there are a bunch of different ways that you can help. You can join the co-op as an individual, as an organization, as a project. We would love to help you meet your needs in that way. We would love for you to donate. This is like entirely how we're funding ourselves, as member dues and donations right now. We live on a shoestring. We have to get some new shoestrings and probably some new shoes. So we would love for you to support us. You'll hear other ways that you can help too. I'm going to put these links in the chat, so you'll have these available to you. You'll learn more about the later ones later, but I want to stop talking now and hear from our Detroit friends. So thank you for being here. I would like to welcome you all to type your introductions to each other in the chat at any time that it makes sense for you. We're not going to probably take the time to do verbal introductions during this session, except for our roundtable. So feel free to introduce yourselves to each other. And then now I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Richard Feldman to kick us off for our Detroit roundtable. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. And I really, really want to thank Stephanie and actually Kim Sherobbi from Detroit, our dear comrade and friend who introduced us and connected us to do this panel. And I really hope that folks put in the chat where they're from and their emails if they want to keep in touch. What's exciting, so my name is Rich Feldman. I've had the privilege of working with James and Grace Boggs since I was 22. I'm now 72, and with the Boggs Center, and I'm with three of my most favorite human beings on the planet. Monique Thompson, who we went to Cuba with, who is from Feedom Freedom Growers and 291 Community House, and she's going to share some of her work. Kim Sherobbi, who is the connector of connectors across the country and across Detroit, from the west side of Detroit and the Birwood House and the different work that she's involved with, and a member of the Boggs Center board of the leadership team. And Coach Kellogg, who I met probably 4 years ago, and we've been meeting weekly every week. And now in the second major year of programming and purchasing of land for a community land trust called Freedom Dreams. The three of them will all share their experiences because of why Detroit matters. And I obviously have to give a shout out to my brother, Al Haber, who is my senior and an old Ann Arbor buddy from decades past. that introduced me to a lot of ideas and thinking way back when. But I'm going to take a few minutes, and then the three friends and comrades from Detroit will share their work, and then I'm hoping we really have some conversation with some hard questions, because language is important, but language without substance is very confusing. And I want to start with, I'm going to use 4 dates as the basis of this brief introduction of why Detroit matters, why visionary organizing matters, and why we're at the stage of convergence and a revolutionary period in which we live. The first is 1967, more than 50 years ago. We had the rebellion in Detroit, and that rebellion, many people believed would lead to revolution, and it did not lead to revolution. And even though more than 3 million African Americans across our country in 67 and 68 were involved in uprisings and rebellions, it challenged Jimmy and Grace Boggs to define revolution different from rebellion. And they defined it as in the following way: a rebellion was a rejection and an uprising within a movement against the injustices of what take place, the highest stage you could move. And we've seen rebellions in Arab Spring, we've seen rebellions with Occupy, we've seen lots of rebellions in this period. And they said a revolution is when you're talking about projections, not rejections. And you're talking about how do we transform ourselves to change the world. And this was a radical view to move from the traditional view of just thinking you could take power. It really had to do with how do we understand the cultural change, as well as the political and economic change that was taking place, and how much we internalize the values of racial capitalism. And I start there because Jimmy and Grace, because ideas really matter. It's not only the practice and the projects and the initiatives that everybody's doing, but the question is, what is the theory behind it? How has it emerged historically? And why is this a particular time to redefine revolution from what it was and how we understood it in the 20th century? And it's important because otherwise we think it's about only doing rather than thinking and doing and reflection. So Jimmy and Grace Boggs really emphasize that ideas matter, that historical understanding matters, and that we have to think dialectically, and that concepts are critical to our movement towards beloved communities. We had a recent discussion with our dear friend Jim Chafers, who made the distinction between the beloved community and beloving communities, and the actions of transforming neighborhoods, one street, one person at a time. That's 1967. And from 1967 onward, Jimmy and Grace and many of us in our small, pitiful way, have been asking this question: what is revolution? What is place-based organizing? What does transformation mean? In 1992, finally, we created something called Detroit Summer, where we brought young people together to rebuild, respirit, and redefine Detroit from the ground up. And the young folks were involved in intergenerational conversations. This is 1992. Now, many of these things are common, but why Detroit matters is there's been this history where racial capitalism after 67 did not want Detroit anymore. They didn't give a damn about Detroit. And they didn't really care until 2008 with the global collapse. So we had a lot of flexibility in this painful moment of the destruction of homes, the movement of work outside the city, outside the country, the hundreds of thousands of foreclosures, the hundreds of thousands of water shutoffs. But people created on their own stamina, their own ingenuity, their own imagination. And Detroit Summer is part of this initial process in 1992. Okay. And so young folks came together from across the country and were involved in rebuilding parks, in doing urban gardens, and doing a lot of murals around the city. And most importantly, it was about leadership development and intergenerational conversation. We never separated the ideas, the conversations from the actual projects of working together. The third date is 2011, and that period, which is, Arab Spring, is Occupy, and then Ferguson and Black Lives Matter emerge, and so forth and so on. Standing Rock, the Me Too movement, this period from 2011 onward. But in Detroit, it was the U.S. Social Forum, and this is why Detroit matters. Up until then, the U.S. Social Forum, which emerged out of the World Social Forums out of Brazil and around the world. The first one was in Atlanta, and the conversation was, another world is possible, another US is necessary. When it got to Detroit, because of the work being done and the concept of emergence of these community place-based initiatives in Detroit Summer, the Allied Media Project, the emerging Boggs School, we added the theme, so it went from another world is possible, another Detroit, another US is necessary, and another Detroit is happening. Because the revolution was happening within the process and not just waiting for something called power, but about how do you create power. And that's 2011. And between 2011 and today, some 10 years, we have seen massive, not hundreds of thousands, but thousands of individuals becoming active in the food security movement, in health, growing a garden, growing a community, as Feedom Freedom will talk about, in terms of community land trusts, in terms of community spaces and places for intergenerational conversations on the west side and the east side, community houses, continuation of a lot of work around art. We hosted New Work, New Culture conferences around maker spaces and fab labs, asking all of these theoretical as well as practical questions. And we really believe we're at the stage of convergence now, that this next decade is an opportunity. And since the murder of George Floyd, and the struggle against Trump, we see an emergence of both a resistance and an opposition, but also a visionary place-based organizing movement taking place to bring people together in ways that folks have not been together. So we come together at this small gathering of people who are having the same conversation across the world, whether it's in Chiapas or it's the Rojava women in Kurdistan, or it's all of you, wherever you happen to live. Asking the question is, how do we create the new world now? And how do we understand that we also have to resist the move towards the counter-revolution, which is also happening? So I'm just going to stop there because I think it's important to see time, the last 50 years, and to imagine the next 50 years, that we are now on a struggle between continued discussion, continued movement of revolution or counter-revolution, and how do we become the new men and women in a beloved community with a vision that is responsible to both ourselves and the planet and to each other. So with that, I want to introduce Monique Thompson, and she's going to share some of the work from Feedom Freedom Growers in 291, and then we'll go around the horn with Kim and Coach Kellogg. So it's all yours, Monique.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I really send you all a very, very warm greeting from cold Detroit. I'm looking at some backgrounds and I'm seeing a lot of instruments, always rock on. I'm seeing a lot of art, very important things to us here at Feedom Freedom Growers. Vicky, I am a cat person to my core. So I just want to say hello to family I didn't know that I had. Rich, that was a very, very, very lovely introduction and just a glance at where we've been in these last 50 years. So I'll share how Feedom Freedom Growers fits in there. Rich gave our slogan, grow a garden, grow a community. So back in 2009, our organization wasn't yet an organization. It was just a family with the idea to grow some food, to better our health and better our beings and bodies. And we connected with Rich and Grace at the Boggs Center. And from there, we really began to examine the world and answer some of the questions that were being asked. We evolved from our garden to a youth group that we have over the summer. We really plan ourselves and our community to show up, be loving neighbors, and provide for one another. We had the opportunity to participate in a USDA grant, and that grant centered around childhood obesity. And because we were growing food, we were inherently tackling that. That was a 5-year grant that allowed us to have different programs. We did a Cook Fresh workshop, which would allow folks to harvest food out of the garden and also cook the food and learn the nutritional qualities of the food that they were eating. So it was a farm to plate, harvest to plate type of program. We also had Art in the Garden, which catered towards youth and families. That was my son who just sang Art in the Garden, if you all heard him. And the focus was on art as a tool to learn. From there, we went on to participate in different markets. If anyone is familiar with Detroit, we have the very historical Eastern Market, which is something that we participated in, and the youth were allowed to operate our market stand. Currently, we have our own market stand on our land, which is an absolute pleasure and privilege. We do host a summer league, a farmers market. We have recently began engaging in community safety, community health and safety, and what that looks like. We are working with the coalition, and Kim is also part of this coalition, Divest, Invest, Divest, which it stems from defund the police, but it's not defund. It is it's abolition work. And it is looking at ways to bring money into the community by reinvesting in just projects and departments that have city money taken away and getting to and feeding the militarization of police and things like that. We are focused on the health of our communities. We will be offering Reiki in this upcoming year, just to really build upon the healing of folks that needs to happen. And we have writer workshops that we've participated in. We also have a writer's workshop upcoming. Again, I mentioned the market that we operate. We communicate with our neighbors constantly in the other organizations. We are working with another grower in our community to establish an association just to keep our work aligned and to reach up and to affect policies that happen, because a lot of times there is a gap between the policymakers and the policies that govern the people that are on the ground working and living. One of the things that has happened over these years has been the reimagining and the imagining of the future that can exist. And I consider FFG as a place where those imaginings are applied and practiced. And I love what I'm hearing from the network. This is my first time hearing of the network. And I forgot that I was speaking today. I was just sitting here taking notes like, oh, I want to learn about that. I want to hear more about that. So I am eager to stay connected, to hear about some of the other work that is going on, to stay connected with you all. I don't think I spoke much about the green chairs, not green lights. Green Chairs, Not Green Lights is a project that directly seeks to take our power back as community members. There is something in Detroit called Project Green Light, and that is a hyper surveillance tool that the Detroit Police Department uses, where businesses and institutions in the city can basically pay for video surveillance from the police department, and it doesn't ensure greater safety or crime prevention. It just it allows for it feeds the facial recognition technology within the city, and there are a couple of known cases where folks have been misidentified and arrested due to the faulty technology. So the Green Chairs initiative aims to take that power back to where we care for our community members. We are seen but not watched, and implement different strategies and approaches that actually reduce harm. It leaves people with their dignity in matters that are not violent, but are still yet crisis. And it's a very personal and it's a loving project to me, because I feel like people have given away a lot of humanity in a sense that we forget that there is still a person when things happen. And I'm thinking of all the instances where folks were having episodes of, you know, mental wellness needs, and they are responded to so violently and sometimes even killed. So we are working diligently, and we're a very small organization, but we are working to figure out how to reduce some of those things in our communities right where we live. I'll stop there, but I would love to hear any thoughts or responses to any of the things that I've shared. And another thing that I definitely need to talk about, because we have a meeting going on right now downstairs, water remedy. Over the summer, we live right near the Detroit River. So for the past couple of years, the water has been rising and actually flooding the property. But this past summer, there were a few storms, and we were flooded severely, and also due to some negligence with the Detroit Water Department, it led to massive flooding, damages in people's homes, and I've heard of people losing basically a lot of treasures, not just appliances, but dear things. So FFG had the opportunity to fundraise. We replaced a couple of furnaces and water heaters for some of our community members, and we are looking to continue that type of work. So connecting with the network would be amazing.
Thanks, Monique. And like you and Monique, I look forward to really having a conversation with everybody. I can see it's just so much to learn and so much that we can share with each other, just from Stephanie's opening to the various information and the introductions that I'm seeing in the chat. So I'm going to give you a short overview and then let Coach Kellogg speak, but I really want to get into the conversation. So again, my name is Kim Sherobbi. I am director of Birwood House, which is actually, if you can see it in the background there, if you on camera, I'm in a home at which I live. I've lived in this area pretty much my entire life. So on the same block for almost, I always say 55, 60 years, you know, somewhere in here. I moved here when I was 3, so I'm 62, so you can do the math. But anyway, so I've lived in this neighborhood in various houses. This is in my family home. My sister, and this is not my family home. My sister lives in my family home. My parents are no longer here. And I have, like I said, literally been here except for when I went away to college. And right now, just taking responsibility for my neighborhood. So I want to tell you, well, I'm going to give you a little more background. So besides being a member of the Boggs Center and director of the Birwood House, I'm involved with what's called Birwood Block Club. In Detroit, we're sectioned into what we call Block Club or streets, and we get together and we organize it in that way. I am also what? So let me, I'm always trying to figure out what to tell people. But anyway, so part of those organizations, interacting with several organizations in my neighborhood. The Birwood House work, and the entity I should share with you, we have this particular house, and diagonal there is another house, a 2-family flat that we have where we provide affordable housing, and then it's a 2-family flat. The lower level is open for solidarity housing when people visit, as well as another meeting space. In addition, we have a green space that we are activating called Gathering Space, which consists of 3 lots. And on the lots, we are building and having events where we are inviting community for conversations. It is developed with flowers, and this is a work in progress. We'll be building more flower beds and a water catchment system on the lot, and really programming that space this summer. In addition to that, Birwood House is working out of a school called Noble School, which is my alma mater. We're working with a program there called Community Lens. We've been in school and programming in the school for 4 years before COVID. And since COVID, we were down a year, and we'll be going back sometime in January. The focus is to have middle school students to look at their community and to figure out how they can actually enhance it or look through a lens of their heart, as well as a camera and other ways. So they're taking control of their community. And that's really what I'm doing here with Birwood House, is that I'm not waiting, as Rick said, we're not waiting for the government to come in and to save us. A lot of people may come to my community and say, your community is blighted. We quickly correct them and say, no, it is disinvested and neglected. So based upon the neglect and the disinvestment, we know that we're responsible for taking care of each other. And again, that's the work that I and my other neighbors were doing. That work is very layered, and it entails, and this is where I think my greatest focus, and I think it's very important, is to do the inner work. The inner work to me is to learn how to connect with your neighbors in a very, with not just your neighbors, with everyone, in a very humane way. And when you find out that there's something missing, then you work on it. It's what Stephanie, again, when she gave the overview in terms of how do we figure out to bring our best humanity to ourselves. So I'm gonna give you a quick example. 2 days ago, there was a young man, he's 28. He's living in an abandoned home, and police surrounded the house, several. And I think the neighbor called, and I was very concerned that they were gonna go in and shoot him or kill him. I'm still trying to figure out, as a neighbor, how to support him in a manner that everybody is nurtured and also safe. And so that's something that is very current for me. And I've I was listening to Tim and his project. So any suggestions that anybody have, I have a lot of ideas too, but I'm finding that that's something that's happening more and more. And how do we interact in a manner that is, again, going to make sure that everybody is taken care of. And how do we, again, this is very layered, as I said, how do we interact with government officials, police officers, and everybody in that holistic way, where we can get the most out of our relationships. So I'll just say two more things and then I'll move on to Coach Kellogg, because I do much better with questions, answer, and conversation. And so for me, I'm always looking dialectically with a both and lens. I know that it's always two sides. Again, trying to balance things and enhance them, and while I'm looking, practicing and creating power as I and we go. And so, Coach Kellogg, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Thank you. How everybody doing? I'm Coach Kellogg, and can y'all hear me, Kim? Okay, good. Let me just share. Why do Detroit matters? And I'm a spiritual man. The Bible teaches me that where your heart is where your treasure is. And my heart is in Detroit. Growing up on the east side of Detroit, we may have been poor, but I had one of the best childhood experiences one can have, you know, and I just love my old community. And so with me, I'm a co-founder of a nonprofit organization called Jonesing for Change. And let me explain Jonesing for Change. Jonesing is when you have a deep passion for something. And so I have a deep passion to see a change take place within my community. Growing up in the 60s and the 70s, I see what they call now the DeQuinder Cut, we call the railroad tracks. And growing up across the railroad tracks, it was an area in which the houses began to fade and you know, and people began to move. A lot of that came about when they began to develop the freeway called I-75. So it pushed more over on our side of the railroad tracks, and some went further towards the Brewster projects or the Jeffrey projects. But now I look and I see all of these, I see a big, beautiful Pepsi plant. I see apartments and young condos and things on that side of the track. But then when I look where I grew up at, and it's like the new ghost town. You have maybe a block with one house on it, or maybe 3 blocks with only one house on it. And so when I come back to Detroit in 2017, I was at an event. And at this event, and I pray that the words I say, I know it's not offensive to Rich, but to others, we were at my high school park, and they were doing the fireworks, and a bunch of the guys, we got together and we started barbecuing and things of that nature. But this was, out of all of these Black people, it was this one white guy walking around talking to people. And I looked and I said, hey, tell that guy right there to come here. And that was the introduction of me and Rich Feldman. And I think that was the best day of my return of getting the opportunity to meet a guy by the name of Rich Feldman. And I tell you, I tell my family about Rich. I tell people, when I'm talking to them, I say, hey, but I got a friend named Rich Feldman. And so me and Rich and Pastor Jones and other people from the community began to talk and meet. But, you know, when you try to establish something, a lot of times people don't want to be a part of those things until they see some development growing. And so me, Rich, and Pastor Jones would meet every Tuesday the first year. But we're talking about they are pushing us out and they are coming in. I forgot the little saying Rich and Pastor had for that. But one day after one of our meetings, my heart was heavy. And I just asked Pastor and Rich, I said, what do y'all see? And of course, you know, they were responding to the vacant lots or a couple abandoned buildings. And I say, no, what do you see? And I say, until we begin to see it, then it will become a reality. And so that's what we begin to focus on. And I think that was, on that day was the birth of the revitalization of our community. And so here it is. They call me Coach Kellogg. One, I eat a lot of Frosted Flakes and things of that nature, but I love to work with the youth. And when you look at the youth, what do the youth really represents? And the youth represents tomorrow. And so when we look at each of us that's on this conference call, and say we all live another 40, 45, 50 years, putting us in the 100-year bracket or whatever. But who will be here to remain? And it will be the youth that we deal with today that can carry the torch of tomorrow. And so when I work with the other nonprofits and our new group, which is called Freedom Dreams, I work with the intensity of that I can be used to help develop another youth that will be able to take the torch that Coach Kellogg stands on, or someone to carry the torch in which Rich stands on. And so as we begin to do our work, that we can continue to have the community to stay intact with white and blacks or Asians or whoever come. I look at our immediate goal, but I also have to remind myself of our future goal. And so what we're doing, we're purchasing vacant lots. And I think we have close to almost 20 lots at this present time, or maybe more. But if you've seen these lots had rocks and trees and tall grass. I mean, it just looked so ugly. But within the last year, and I thank God, with the hard work of myself and others, we began to mow those lots. And I tell you, when you come through, you say, wow, you can say, wow, look at this, what they're doing. And so now people that is within the community are beginning to desire to become more a part of what we're doing. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about my particular lots that Jones for Change is applying for. Here we'll put a row all the way across the front that we have tulips, perennials, rose bushes, and things of that nature, that when people ride down that street, they're going to begin to their attention is going to be, look, oh, wow, look how pretty that is. Then we have places in which we will do rain gardens. I don't know if you're familiar with Tyree Guyton with the Heidelberg Project, but our area connects to his, and now we have made a path in which you can begin to see both projects coming together, but that's just the first phase of it, to heal and to develop the land. But our ultimate goal is to begin to make a small eco village. I liked it the way Rich said earlier, that we can do it at one person at a time, but I believe that we could do it one lot at a time as well. And when we begin to develop that small eco village on a universal design, that means that if you're handicapped, you can come and live there. Whatever your issues may be, and it's going to be for low income housing, that is the ultimate goal. But the most important is that we begin to develop our youth. And so here we have one of our nonprofits is Sweet Kingdom Missionary Church. And they have an old annex, which we have now changed the name from the church annex to the James and Rose Robinson Community Center. But behind this center, we have a carriage house. It's amazing. We have a young man by name Sam who's come in, and we begin to do work and clean out. And in this carriage house, they had 2 kid cars, Cadillacs. And I said, we're not going to throw them away. What we're going to do is just put them on the lots and let them beautify the community. I say, if someone desires to have one, they come and get it. We have no problem with it. But it's amazing how the community is starting to come together to ask, hey, how can we help? How can we be a part of this? And, it's a man named Dave that came that wants to help Sam and say he knows how to do welding and flooring and things of that nature. So I'm just blessed and thank God that now people begin to see the work that we're doing and how it will impact the community that they want to be a part. Because to me, a true community is when everybody in the area begins to become one. And I think that in doing so, it would cut down the crime rate, and we will begin to police our own community. We will begin to police our own community, and we don't have to have the city of Detroit to come and say, well, y'all got to do this or got. No, we want to be off the grid. So prayerfully, we'll be able to get the solar panels, and we'll have our own Wi-Fi. We'll have our own energy source, and hopefully learning from others, we'll be able to clean up some of the water in the community. So that's what we're doing. And we would love for anybody who wants to come and be a part of what we are doing, because I tell you, when you look up, you're going to see that the Freedom Dream has truly made a dream come true to many people in the city of Detroit. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Monique, Kim, and Coach. So let's open it up. Why don't we, whoever wants to just jump in, unmute yourself, just say where you're from and your name and ask a question, and let's get a few questions out there and have a conversation. Let's see where it goes.
Don't be shy.
Okay, I'll start. Chatty Cathy. I've been trying to Google some things while you all have been talking and looking up these different things that you're alluding to. I lived in Detroit for a little while in 2008. It was so exciting to see what was going on and starting to come to the front. And I grew up there, not in Detroit, but like Western burbs. Anyway, I go back and visit family, and I'd love to like visit or get to know you when I'm there. And I'm just wondering, how do I look up these things? Are there links that we could share? I now live several hours away, so wouldn't be very often, but when I'm there, I would definitely love to see you and visit you.
Okay, I don't have a website or a link at this point. Need to work on it. Bessie doing the work and practicing. We'll get to it, but I will put my name and number in the and email in the chat for everyone, and you're welcome to contact me. I just had a group from Chicago that was here, and so not a problem if it works time-wise. Yep.
For the Freedom Dream, if you're familiar with the Eastern Market.
In that same spirit.
Oh, go ahead.
Can you hear me? I just wanted to share a few. Go to riverwisedetroit.org. You'll see a lot of articles, website. If you're in the West, are you on the west side of the state? Sounds like. You should also, you're probably right between Sweetwater Foundation, Chicago, and all this happening in Detroit. So you can see the best of both worlds right now. Exciting stuff going on. And just email the Boggs Center as well. Or give us your email and we'll follow up as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sort of like nearer to Chicago, but yeah, kind of southwestern edge.
And one of the groups that we're interacting with in Chicago that you may want to go by and learn about is Sweetwater Foundation. So Coach Kellogg talked about Sam Scarfield, and he's here working with all three groups, Feedom Dreams, Birwood House, and Feedom Freedom. And he actually is coming from Sweetwater. We're all working with an initiative. We're networking not only in Detroit, but across the nation with other groups.
Feedom Freedom Growers, you can find us on Facebook, and I will put the spelling in the chat. It's Feedom with no R in the first one, Feedom Freedom Growers. But whenever you're here, we love to do tours. You can see the garden site where we grow, the market stand, the art pavilion where we do have music and other art showcases. You can also see the culture hub, which is a little bit further down the road, where we do our indoor programming, and we love guests. I'll put all the information you need in the chat.
If you live in, what is your name, first of all?
He can't necessarily see. He's driving. Rich is driving, so he can't.
Okay, are you talking about the person that asked to visit? I'm Kathy Sipple.
Hi, Kathy. So I assume if you're on the southwest side of Michigan, it's a pretty white area. Is that true?
Actually, I almost hate to say it, but I'm in Indiana, Northwest Indiana.
Okay, that's probably a pretty white area too, maybe, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have some diversity in like Lake County. I'm in Porter County, so yeah, it's pretty white.
Yeah, the reason I was saying that is another part of the work that I happen to be involved with is Truth Towards Reconciliation Initiative in this South Oakland County. And I say that because I think with the quote racial reckoning taking place and the uplifting of it's time to face systemic racism, which is much more than policy changes. And I don't think Biden nor Harris understand what the word systemic racism really, really means, because they both love capitalism still. it's important to figure out how do we involve and engage with people who are of European descent and deal with their own history of either being silent to racism or collaborating with it to be comfortable. And so I think as we build the future and these alternatives, we also have to undo the false story of the history of the areas in which we live and go through a truth telling. So I wanted to put that out on the agenda as well.
Okay, and I'm gonna also add, and I just really appreciate Rick's work that he's doing in the suburbs, in his neighborhood, asking people once they put the Black Lives Matter signs up, okay, so now what's next? What does that actually mean to you? And so in addition to what Rick is doing, I also meet with a group called Semester in Detroit. It's a University of Michigan program where they have young people, mostly from the suburbs, not always, from across the country. It is interesting, most of them end up being from the suburbs in Michigan, mostly white, who I encourage also to start interacting with their community, their parents, other white people about racism and just confronting it and how we can change it. That's a huge part of what's going to help us be more human. And if we don't touch it, and if we stay away from that, and if we don't learn how to talk about race and get uncomfortable with it, but still be respectful, we're going to stay in the same position. I would also say at the same time, any contradictions with any human beings, that we need to address them. We need to address the ones in our community as Black folks, the things that are in contradiction. But I, again, want to make sure that I say that that's something that I encourage whites to do.
Thank you.
I'd like to jump in and both affirm that I'm in Ann Arbor. We work on the community commons, trying to see a place where everyone can have a place that is for everyone in the center of the city. But I just came to my attention that this is the decade for the people of African descent created by the United Nations from 2015 to 2024. That somehow in these last 7 years of this, it has not come to the attention of anyone in the city of Ann Arbor, near as I know. And I think that's a reference point to affirm the importance of people of African descent in the midst of our less than embracing society. So we're trying to do that in the center of Ann Arbor, bring the African-American community into the center of the city rather than in the neighborhood of their historic presence, most of whom have been driven out to neighboring Ypsilanti. In any case, I'm very pleased to be part of this. I have to pass out for a little while and I will be back. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Monique. I'm glad to hear all this. And Coach Kellogg, maybe I'll get to the more enlightened parts of Michigan to the east of Ann Arbor. We have a high reputation here and a very low performance, but we do try. Thanks a lot.
And we thank you for your work. Thank you so much.
Ellen, I guess that's a reason that people are always talking about Madison and Ann Arbor being twins, because we also have the high reputation and low performance, especially in terms of racial justice and social justice. Who wants to throw in?
I just wanted to comment. I'm Randy from Madison, Wisconsin. And I was really struck by the comment about when you see the Black Lives Matter sign in the yard, you know, what does that mean to the person? I've been studying deep canvassing is something that is being explored as a way to change people's minds, or at least connect with people in a meaningful way. And it just struck me, I'm part of a neighborhood anti-racism group that's always talking about, well, you know, what are ways we can engage people? And it just struck me as a perfect combination to just spread out and knock on people's doors who have the signs and just engage them and say, what are you going to do next? What are your actions? And it just, I thank you for pointing that out, because it's just an obvious way to draw people into this work. So thank you.
And Randy, I want to just kind of push the issue. The actions, I would encourage you to encourage people that the next action is to search their souls and search their beings in terms of how they're perpetuating and keeping up the racism, the tension, the divisions. And that's really where the work is. And so when I talk about the inner work, that's what I'm talking about. And that's for every human being. So if each one of us can look and search our souls and say, how am I perpetuating the inhumane way that people are being treated, no matter what it is, whether it's racism, whether it's ableism, whether it's classism, to constantly look inside ourselves, challenge ourselves, and find out where we have contradictions and where we need work to raise that humanity is what's important.
Thank you.
In that same spirit, Randy, you said, knock on people's doors and say, what are you willing to do beyond this? So my question to the anti-racist group that you're part of, what does that mean that you do and that you think? And I'm saying that because it's right to ask questions. It's also right that people have to be uncomfortable. Part of being white is to want to be comfortable above anything else. So I'll be anti-racist, but I'll go to the massive shopping mall and be materialistic as can be, even though that's the racism we all know this around this table, that's the racism and the capitalism that's made the world arid and the planetary crisis, right? So with Martin Luther King, who said we need to struggle against the evil triplets of racism, materialism, and militarism, and if he lived today, would have been saying patriarchy, ableism, and planetary destruction. And we need a new radical revolution in values. Now, people who have the signs see themselves as either liberal or progressive or something. They're not really engaged in the deep struggles that needs to take place around racial capitalism or this work that Kim is talking about. And then we have the whole other section of folks that really believe in the counter-revolution and Trump because they're so scared. So this is a very, so my question is, how do people become comfortable?
Rich, you're talking in slow motion. You may not know that, but you're kind of almost frozen. And you're talking in slow motion, so we can't hear everything right now that you're saying, unfortunately. Even though you keep trying, Rich, but right now we really can't hear everything that you're saying.
For a discussion and action. I dream in the suburbs, shopping mall, and days a week. Thank you.
I like how it catches up at the end.
I'll wait. I'll hold on.
Monique, were you gonna say something?
Randy, I often ask the question, what are you willing to do? And if we examine the world, really racial patriarchy, capitalism is an issue for all of us, no matter what, how hot or comfortable the chair that we sit in. And I was really able to see that once the water started rising, and the water is not gonna, I can throw all the money I want at it when it comes, it's not gonna see if I'm white, black, or whatever. And I asked the question, what answering the question why Detroit matters is because we are dreamers, we are believers, we are doers, and we are also worthy. And that's evident in the work that we are doing. And I haven't really talked about this much, but it was a shock to my system once Black Lives Matter emerged and came out. I didn't know that that was something that we had to broadcast and broadcast so widely. So it is a question that folks need to, or a statement that folks need to look at, and that inner work is so very critical. It is so very critical for any of our advancement. And just watching the way technology is advancing, the way we are driving for economic advancement, and yet our souls are immature as a whole. What are we all willing to do, and what are we doing?
I would like to chime in. I am Karen Crozier from Fresno, all the way in California, between Los Angeles and San Francisco, and on the lands of the Yokuts, first inhabitants. I guess I first want to say is thank you, Monique, Kim, and Coach, for sharing your vulnerability and your authenticity and your continual dedication and determination to be present in very difficult spaces at difficult times, as well as your awareness of the necessity of the inner work. Oftentimes in our social political visions and work, we neglect, abandon, forsake the necessity of the interiority. And I'm an ordained minister as well. And often even the church doesn't really know what it means to be tending to the interior self as well as the external self in response to this present moment. So I wanted to affirm you and thank you for the way you have showed up in this space. And a couple of follow-up questions around the Invest Divest Coalition that Monique, you identified, saying that it focuses on the abolition. And can you please speak to more about what is it seeking to abolish, and in what framework, in light of what Rich has identified as far as bell hooks? She called it the white supremacist, imperialist, capitalist patriarchy system. So racism, capitalism is huge, along with the patriarchy system that defines it and continues to perpetuate it. So what are you seeking to abolish? And then what role does reparations play in light of the renewed conversation, both locally and nationally, in many spaces in which it is emerging? And then finally, is to all of you who have presented, in particular, Coach Kellogg, since you are a minister as well, Acts chapter 4 and 5 deals with commons and mutual sharing amongst believers after Pentecost. If you are a Christian, many of you would know we are in the Advent season, and 40 days after Easter is known as 50 days is known as Pentecost. And so Acts chapter 4 and 5 deals with how the people who assented to Jesus as the Messiah began to create new communities within the Roman Empire that provided them a means and a ways to share their resources. And those who had much sold what they had and gave to everyone who did not have, who, as they broke bread together, prayed together, as well as shared a common life. So wanted to know, in what ways are you all, particularly Coach Kellogg, being shaped or informed by those particular scriptures and passages? That was a lot. Thank you.
Well,
Oh, go ahead, Coach Kellogg.
okay, I'm going to speak about the spiritual, especially when you're talking about Acts chapter 4 and 5. You know, to me, people always have that motive, and so when you deal with people, I think you should just try to define what is their motive. And as for me, I try to bring forth the community together that we can share not only my dream, but their dreams. Or if at one time when the pandemic started, I remember me and my niece, we would go down to Cobo Hall because everybody don't have transportation. So when they're giving away food, some of the seniors can't go. They just don't have the transportation. But I took it upon myself that we would go and we would distribute to those that I knew didn't have the transportation. Sometimes, because I know almost everybody in the neighborhood, if they needed me to take them to the store or whatever. And so I use the resources that God has given me to help those in need. And it's fortunate that you talked about that, because as well, I'm also with Jones for Change is a community garden. And some of the team members always laugh. I say, no, we raised some cabbages, because I know one cabbage can practically help feed a family. But I also want to beautify the community. So in our work, I want us to begin to create, get seeds and grow little flowers so that people in the community can come and they can beautify their front yards. And so those are the things that I personally work to do. We also do feeding. Now, my ultimate vision, and I'm opening it up so Rich them gonna know now. I want to get someone from the Eastern market to donate about 5 turkeys and get some corned beef and get some cabbages and get some of the people in the neighborhood to make a Thanksgiving dinner next year. And I don't, not just feeding them. No, I want to sit down with them and eat together, and to let them know, those who are less fortunate, hey, we're here for you. And you'll be surprised at the people who would want to come and be a part of what Freedom Dreams is doing, just because you sit down, not fix them a meal, because see, you can fix them a meal and they go on their way. But if you sit down with them, then they begin to see the true love of God. So I just wanted to share that. And thank you for the access.
Thank you, Coach Kellogg. I'm gonna let Monique speak to the abolition and the work, the divest invest work. But I have to leave. It was nice meeting everybody. Look forward to talking again. Have a great holiday and take care and be well.
Bye, Kim. I'm a little sad that Kim had to leave because I needed her to back me up on our tender coalition. It is a very young but eager group of us. We are working with the Detroit Justice Center. I can link their information in the chat. And we're following a model out of Colorado where the goal is to divert funding for the criminal penalization system, the criminal incarceration system, divert funding that is already available, just not yet allotted, into more social advocacy programs. So we're creating a sustainable framework for the city. So once the money is released, it can come straight to organizations that are already doing this work. We are really just framing it so that we can appeal to lawmakers and legislators for ground folks who are already doing the work. And something that struck me during one of these conversations, a lobbyist who was working actually on our side, Safe and Just Michigan, his name is John, he said that the lawmakers do not understand the needs of the community, nor do they know how to correct them. And for me, that struck in my mind. My next thought was, so what qualifies these people to do this work at this point and create these laws if they don't understand the needs of the people, nor how to correct them? So again, the coalition is really striving to create a framework and create alternatives and strategies to prevent crime and incarceration, and present that to lawmakers and claim some of the funding that is available.
I'd love to jump in and offer something here, if that's okay. So I really appreciate, the divestment reinvestment framework and the conversation about, the inner work and the visioning and, asking people what they're going to do. And then I want to offer some flip side of creating things to offer for people to do, and some of the doing that can lead to the inner shift, and just coming from a very white and very racially unjust Madison, Wisconsin. I became aware of the conditions maybe about, I moved here in 1990 and probably didn't really become aware of what was going on around me until the early 2000s. And that's when I became really motivated to do something about it. And it was super unclear what could be done, especially in a really segregated city. So one thing that happened a lot is they would do study circles on race, and it just occurred to me that the people who were already motivated to do that were the ones doing that. When I learned about time banking and started the time banking in 2005, I just saw with my own eyes how, first of all, we had to structure it. We had to do it in a way where there was authentic neighborhood leadership, based in communities, dreaming up how they wanted to apply time banking with community leadership. So I don't mean to imply that time banking always is some miraculous connector. And the fact that we were coming together in communities, working on things that everybody had a shared motivation, that there's beauty, there's fun, there's joy, and we're coming together about something positive, and coming together on a very human level, having to identify and then build on our shared values was enormous. And I still feel that potential is enormous. And the way I started seeing it is there's no substitute for spending time together, and working together is kind of a shortcut, or gets you spending more intensive, getting to know each other in a different way, and traveling together is an even better shortcut. So I wanted to throw that in and also say that we have had our time bank at the time that I'm not with anymore, but our mutual aid network and the time bank still, we have a strong focus on displacing the criminal system. I've just started calling it the criminal system. And we have an old paper that needs updated, but it's about how we can quantify how you could take money and invest it in a community and even show how you'll have so much better outcomes in so many ways. And would love to just connect. We've had other summits where we've connected, especially between Detroit and St. Louis, about, how we can sort of back each other up and everything. That I'm sure you've encountered the phenomenon of the prophet from another land, but it's always showing what everyone else is doing. And then community, especially like bureaucracies, are way more open to doing something else that another community is doing, and always like lifting each other up, making each other look good, like build on. And we do have a new, we have some institutional, I mean, everything's a mess as usual between different institutions, bureaucracies, and communities and organizations. And we have some movement that's happened. We, for example, have a new civilian crisis response for the city where people can, there's a team to respond with no gun to mental health crises. So that was long, I apologize, but I'd like to share more later. I see Kathy's hand, and I did, so Kathy, you can go ahead and go next. I'm sorry if I missed anyone.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask something specifically about time banking and linking it back to somebody else who brought up reparations, where that should be in the conversation. And I've just found myself as the coordinator and the founder of a time bank, sometimes in these trades with people like Stephanie and Kate, when you were here for the solidarity sprint, like we helped a woman in Gary, and I just said, hey, don't worry about it. You're in the time bank. Like, you've given me so much information about how to garden, and she's Black. Okay. And she said, I don't really like the idea of a bunch of white people descending upon my house to help me out. I'm like, all right, you're my friend. I love your front yard garden. I want you to succeed. Like, you asked for my help, so now I want to help. And I wonder like what we need to tweak in time banking to like make it more visible, or make it more okay to just say like, I don't know how to fix that thing. It's like, you're wanting to do the right thing. You want to get to the root of the problem. You want to offer help. And she asked for help. And yet I'm like, well, I am white. And these people that are visiting, they're also white. So like, how can we make this good or okay? And just since we're talking about like food access and everything, there's a woman in our time bank who just within the last week, she's also Black. She works full time. I have my own business. I have a lot of flexibility, so I can go down to the salvage grocery and get food that would otherwise end up in a landfill, and I can get it for like super cheap, And I just like, I don't want her to have to give me time or time banking. I'm like, we're neighbors. I can do this for you. So I just would like ideas for how to make a system that makes, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm asking. That I'm going to stop now and see if anybody can.
I'll just say really briefly, that is part of the point of making mutual aid networks and moving away from being time banks to create something that is not reliant on the type of exchange, and that is built to have a community communicate, govern, and decide themselves and build wealth redistribution and be built on principles and this kind of explicit conversation. And we'll get into the nuts and bolts more in later sessions. And I want to just give it back to, the rest of the circle to take wherever you want.
Yeah, is there anybody who has a question or a comment that they'd like to make? Because we still have about 20 more minutes, and I was going to share something, and I think this last question and our friend from California, I wanted to follow up a little. I thought there's a few other things.
Maybe.
I did want to say something. In response to Kathy, I don't want to take us too far away from our goal of our conversation, but just keep in mind, and I'm saying this as a Black person, as a Black woman who I have a garden, and I have been descended upon by a bunch of white people before. So keep in mind, a lot of times Black people have had to be very private, and we care deeply about what we can say is ours. And a lot of times, basically our history in America, when there are white people present, that means that we are less safe because we are inherently a threat to whiteness just by proxy, just because we're Black. So, and that goes back to what Rich shared about white people in their discomfort and unlearning some of the things that just white people just know and have been able to comfortably operate in since Black people have been on American soil. So it's not that she doesn't want the help or doesn't need the help. Internally, there are very real things. She may feel less safe. She doesn't want to be under the judgment or the criticism or however it is presented in her mind. So the best thing is to truly respect that and ask her what in turn could the exchange be. But that is a very real thing. And that internal change that Kim spoke about, that is why that so deeply needs to happen. And it needs to happen immediately for the advancement and the betterment of us all, because here it is, you can't even exchange in a loving way that you want to, because you have to respect this person's reasonable boundaries.
Can I share something with that before, just real briefly, Rich?
Go for it, bro. Go for it. Yeah.
What I want to share is, and I mentioned it earlier about motives, as a Black male growing up, it's always about the motive. What motive? What is? And so when I thought about what Monique and them was sharing, you know, we look at people and say, well, what is their real motive? You know, and I had to learn, me as a person, and I shared this with Rich. We have a young lady, part of our team, and I'm talking about she is truly a blessing to our team. But then when you look at gardening from her eyes and gardening from my eyes, you got two different pictures. And sometimes those views or those pictures collides. And not that she means any hurt or harm to me, or that I mean any hurt or harm to her, but it's just the way we see things. And so to give a good example, when we're talking about, I want to get a tiller. She said, well, if you till the ground too much, it can hurt the soil. So I didn't know that. I just knew that my mama say, hey, y'all boys go out there, flip that dirt, smooth it out, and make me some rows, and we go plant some seeds. So it's all about motive and how the eyes of the person that is sharing. Okay, Rich, I'm through.
Yeah, no, this is super. This is powerful conversation, and I want to continue it. I think the word help is a very interesting word. On the one level, we want everybody to feel vulnerable and to be able to ask for help with dignity and trust and respect, and not as coming from a place of powerlessness. At the same time, when white folks often say, I want to help, they often see Black folks, Indigenous folks, people of color as oppressed people, rather than as people that have created entirely full lives within the unfucking believable, excuse my French, of racial capitalism, enslavement in 500 years, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a new book by Brene Brown and Tamara Burke that just came out. That is really the struggle around how do we have these difficult conversations, and how do white folks begin to see that they're using their power through their belief in helping, rather than in creating interdependent relationships that build community and are supportive of what leadership means from the community outward. And it's a long conversation. It's a difficult conversation. And it's not just one project. It's about relationship building, and it's about going to a place where we've never been in this country. And while I'll still say it's one person at a time and one block at a time, and Coach is saying one parcel at a time, I agree. And the other thing is, how does the project that you're working with people on create power in the community, which is different from influencing power at government and taking power through dual power structures. So I think the initiatives are about relationships. are about transformation. And lastly, Monique introduced us to an amazing piece by Brother Whitfield around freedom and healing and place-based organizing, which if folks email me, I'd love to send them the booklet that has his article in it. And I just put it in the chat. But it's an amazing piece on freedom now, not freedom after the revolution. And how in the world did people not only survive, but create dignity within 500 years of enslavement to imagine freedom and create freedom. That's what it means to be human.
I can put a link to that article in the chat. It's liberated on what does it take to be free, but I do encourage everyone to still email Rich. He is a wealth of information.
Anybody who hasn't chatted want to throw in 2 cents or 5 cents?
You know you want to.
I'll just pop in and say I've heard bits. I've been travelling. I'm in East Yorkshire, and I've missed a lot of it, but it just feels really rich. I literally came in and sat in a pub. It's in the evening here, but so I haven't got much to contribute because I've been struggling to hear and keep dropping off. But like what I have heard, it warms my heart, and yeah. And I'm going to listen to the recording. Yeah.
What? Anybody else? Or I have a way to close out the conversation.
There's so last call for someone else. I'm gonna say something otherwise, but I would happily have you say it. Go ahead, Ian.
I'll just say briefly.
Can't hear you, Brian.
Can't hear you. Your mic's not working.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just say, I just wanted to say thank you everyone for everything that's been shared. It's been very inspiring, and just second what the woman from Karen said from California, is the vulnerability and just the power of what y'all said was very much felt. The only question I would have, if and you all have shared a lot already, so feel free to not to stop where you have. Just, you know, some of the details that even Coach Kellogg just touched on in terms of the work that people have done in the actual ground, you know, converting land, community land into, you know, folks that are doing farming, urban farming, you know, what has worked for them in that arena. Any of those, any more details on that, I'd be interested to hear. But thank you.
Maybe folks, so Detroit has 1,800 to 2,000 community gardens, neighborhood gardens, church gardens, school gardens. There are more people per person in Detroit engaged in community gardens, which comes out of the movement of Black Americans from the South and the Great Migration, and bringing the whole discussion and the whole commitment to the earth and to the farming and food security. And we're at this stage of convergence where I started the conversation about the last 10 years, where we're now creating the Detroit Black Food Security Network is creating a food co-op that'll be based on local produced food, grown food, as well as cooperative kitchens and so much more in the middle part of Detroit. And they're breaking ground for that food co-op this in the next month and a half, I think, actually. And that's what I mean, that when we say we're converging, and what we've seen emerging for the last 10 and 20 years is now coming to institutions. There's also a Love campus that's bringing together the Allied Media Project and all the work they do, along with Detroit Justice Center and Detroit Disability Power, as well as other organizations. So people are creating campuses, and in the work in Detroit, the Freedom Dreams, this is, as Coach said, the healing of land. We're healing it. We're building a stage, and we're planting trees as part of, and urban gardens and all that as part of the beautification, to now engage with the community to create something, as he clearly talked about, the eco village. There's a community house movement in Detroit, as Monique is part of the 291 house and responsible for. So, and the Green Chairs Project is to imagine 100 or 200 or 300 green chairs on porches, so that people are watching each other and taking care of each other and protecting each other. So we create communities that don't need police. But all of these projects, all of these initiatives, from the building and involvement of young people and families, are based on a theory of transformation and revolution that has been emerging in Detroit because capitalism didn't want it for so long, and because of the pain in which it created. And now we have this amazing moment where while at the same time we're surrounded by counter-revolutionary forces that conspired to kill and kidnap the governor. So it's an amazing moment. Those are my closing comments. I would like to ask everybody just go around and share a few words and call it a day.
What if I have a follow-up question for you, Rich, regarding—
Go for it. I'm game.
I think I have two. One is, you said that there's a moment of convergence. So are you defining convergence between entities who were once alienated from one another, such as the community, bureaucracy, and other entities that are not named? So could you specify, when you're saying what is the nature of the convergence that you see taking place? And in your critique of capitalism, are you saying capitalism is unredeemable? Because there are people who are capitalists, I'm not of that ilk, that who want to assert that capitalism can be redeemed. It's just the fact that it is extracting. And so it's not inherently evil in and of itself. And so where do you stand on that in your work in leadership?
Great questions. Great questions. So the first one, I think the stage of capitalism has always been predatory, has always been exploitative. You can't separate capitalism from the emergence of the slave trade and and everything that took place for the last 500-600 years with Western civilization. And it's coming to an end. It's falling apart. The system is broken totally and will never redeem itself. I'm not talking about small businesses. I'm not talking about markets that are community-based. I'm talking about the fact that we are now at a stage of global capitalism that no longer needs nation states, that in fact is intergalactic. That's why Bezos, whatever that dude's name is, from is going they're trying to figure out how to get exploit the resources of the moon and the Mars, and that's coming next. Africa is going to be decimated for this, as though that's a new phenomena in ways that we can't imagine, because of this last gulp of how do we gain control more of physical resources and precious metals. So yeah, I don't think capitalism is redeemable in any form or fashion. It's a system that eats itself up alive, that made its money off of destroying nature and destroying people. What comes next? We don't know. It could be worse, it could be better. I have no delusion that socialism is the answer. I don't even know what that word means anymore. So I'm not talking about the inevitability of capitalism going to socialism, but I believe that feudalism and the history of the last 600-700 years were choices people made and powers that dominated to create the system in which we've lived and destroyed our humanity. And now it's time to grow our souls, as Grace Boggs has said. And I think the stories and the work that so many of you are doing, that Monique shared and Kim shared and Coach shared, is about growing our souls and growing our humanity. So that's that question. In terms of what convergence means, from my view, and I really appreciate you asking, is I don't think we see. So in Detroit, people have done amazing work around food security. They've done amazing work around solar or wind, or water struggles, or art in revolution, or free Wi-Fi, and the Allied Media projects, or transformative justice, restorative justice and transformative justice. But I think too often they don't see, and we don't see, that that's all related to creating a new social movement in our country, in our city. So we're converging into seeing the interconnectedness while people work on what they've emerged. And I don't mean a coalition. I don't know what I mean, to be honest with you. What I know is when we started the Riverwise magazine, it was a way to show in narratives the stories in Detroit that show how they're all connected, and that over time they will emerge, because that's how I think culture changes and politics and economics change. They emerge to relate to each other in ways that are organic, not just forced upon by another coalition or another conference, even though those might be tactics we use. So I think how it forms itself to a convergence stage is really that, not that they've been antagonistic to each other, but they just work within their own lane, and that's okay. But their lane is much larger than their lane. Grow a garden is grow a community. Freedom Dreams is about the youth 50 years from now. So I think it's a great question, and I think we're just at the stage of exploring. If you read Adrienne Marie Brown's stuff, clearly she's, her emergent strategy book comes out of relationships with and study of Meg Wheatley and Grace Boggs and the science fiction person, drawing a blank.
Octavia Butler.
Octavia Butler. Thank you, Octavia Butler. Thank you so much. So this is a new moment. It's not 1967 of rebellion. It's 60 years later of another revolutionary period. And this conversation is what it led to Chiapas and the Zapatistas in '94, and all across the world, in India and everywhere, people are having this conversation of what is the next world that gets created. And at the same time, we're all fighting real fascist, dangerous human beings and movements, because they want to hold on to the past, just like the kings and queens wanted to hold on to their past when capitalism was emerging. Who wins? Who knows? It's our work to do. So I love being with all of you. You guys are great, and I hope we keep in touch.
We have about 20 seconds per person. Let's just, if you want to say your quick checkout and pass the mic, that would be lovely. Who's ready to start?
I'm off mute. I'll go ahead and start. But Stephanie, I love your last comment. I was thinking, oh, this is getting juicy too, but here it is, time to go. So what I was going to say before that is I guarantee you all that I will continue on with all of my audacity to vision something different and go towards something different. And I encourage you all to do so as well. Thank you.
I guess I'll say something next. Together we can make a difference.
Nick, what do you got?
Kate?
Yeah, hi. I really heard that about interconnecting, and I guess for me, it's moving beyond islands of activism. And I put in a chat that I was asked to facilitate Hull's first assembly last weekend, and we had people from all, like, really a cross section of, like, sort of from, I don't know, climate action to green spaces to education to street workers challenging our local council to all of that. And it just feels like it's a start, and it's like that interconnectedness and this interconnect. I'm so disappointed I couldn't hear everything. I'm going to listen back, but this is it. This is like, it's our stepping into our citizen power pants and acting together. So thank you.
Okay, I'll say thanks again to everyone, and for really embodying and pointing to the ways in which vulnerability is power.
Well, I'll just say thank you for providing this island of learning in this space for overlapping circles where we don't usually get to reconnect. I feel always so grateful to be here and always like reminded of how much I have to learn. So thanks for providing that space to be a wake-up call and to keep me hungry for more.
Anyone else want to say a checkout? We won't make you speak up. Karen, did you want to say a parting thought? And
Not sure. Oh.
all right. Anyone pop in if you want to. Hello, nice to see those of you who've joined us. And meanwhile, my parting thought is it's making me think of the imaginal cells of butterfly that connect to transform from the caterpillar to a butterfly, especially when Coach Kellogg was talking about being able to see the projects from one another now that they're converging toward each other. So very beautiful. And thank you so much for today. All right, everyone's spoken who wants to. All right, once again, so Kim Sherobbi is the one who made the introduction between me and Rich Feldman, and thank you so much for pulling that roundtable together. Everyone, it was so beautiful to hear from and learn from. So thank you for being here. We're going to take a 2-minute break and come back for the next session, and we will hear more from you in future sessions, hopefully.